What is good, everybody? Welcome back to another episode brought to you by the League FFB. Today, we are going to be talking about 5 high value Dynasty handcuffs. And I wanted to bring you guys this video because as we get closer and closer to this fantasy football season, there's going to be guys that we need to start filling out our rosters with. We need to be prepared for some injuries because we know that they're going to happen. We need to have guys that are going to be able to fill in and give you fantasy football production. And so this list that I have for you guys today is 5 guys who will be able to do that for you with a wide range of outcomes. Some of them are going to be cheaper than others. Some of them are going to be more expensive. But at the end of the day, all of these guys are going to be able to help your fantasy football rosters if something happens to the starter, or some of them might potentially have their own roles just built in already. So let's not waste any more time. Let's just talk about these 5 guys and we will go from there. So the first guy that I want to talk about today is going to be Zamir White. Zamir is the backup running back to Josh Jacobs. He plays for the Las Vegas Raiders, was drafted in the 4th round just a year ago. He's currently being valued as the 61st running back on Keep Trade Cut. So the value is very, very low for Zamir White. However, I was super impressed with Zamir's talent when he was coming out in his draft class. I felt like the Las Vegas Raiders would have potentially decided to move on from Josh Jacobs and give Zamir White the backfield if Josh Jacobs didn't end up having the season that he had. Now, I didn't see that coming from Josh Jacobs. It was a fantastic season from Josh Jacobs. They do end up hitting him with the franchise tag, which does delay the possibility of Zamir White possibly taking over the backfield. Now, I don't know if that's even in the range of outcomes anymore for Zamir White. However, I do think that Zamir has the ability that if there was a injury to Josh Jacobs, Zamir White can fill in and do everything that Josh Jacobs does. He may not be as good of a pass catcher as Josh Jacobs, but I think he's certainly feasible in that aspect of the game. If there were an injury, Zamir could step in and take 15 to 20 carries a game, and I think he would be super relevant for your fantasy football rosters. So this is kind of a guy that you can buy, put on the back of your rosters, maybe even throw him on the taxi squad, depending on how yours is set up. And it's not going to cost you a ton. I would be adding Zamir White to your rosters. And if you're the Josh Jacobs owner, you should definitely be having Zamir White on your roster as well. Now, the second guy that I want to talk about is going to be Jerome Ford, backup running back for the Cleveland Browns and backup for Nick Chubb. Now, Jerome is being valued currently as running back 53 on Keep Trade Cut. He's seen a little bit of a uptick here as of lately, but I think a lot of that is coming to the realization that Kareem Hunt is likely not going to re-sign to be with the Cleveland Browns. I wouldn't completely throw that out of possibility, but it does look like the Cleveland Browns are prepared to move forward with Jerome Ford as the RB2. We've seen that RB2 have some value in the past. Jerome Ford, again, this is his 2nd year. He's coming out of Cincinnati. He was a Bearcat, and I really did like the tape for Jerome Ford as well. He kind of has some of the traits of your typical 3-down back. He does have some soft hands. He can catch the football. He plays well between the tackles, and ultimately, he's just a really solid player. If there were an injury to Nick Chubb, Jerome Ford could step in and give you some really solid fantasy football production. But I do think that there is possibility that maybe Jerome Ford is going to step in and kind of take that Kareem Hunt role. We know that Nick Chubb isn't superb in the pass game. There's a chance that Jerome Ford could step in and take some of that receiving work and ultimately work alongside Nick Chubb as a change of pace guy and kind of have some value there. So I don't know if he's going to be as good as Kareem Hunt was in that role, but he is going to be valuable to some degree. And if there is an injury to Nick Chubb, he's going to be pretty damn good. So I would be adding him to my rosters. And again, he is fairly cheap to go get at the moment. Again, being valued as running back 53. There's not a lot of people who value him very highly. So you could grab him, throw him on the back end of a roster. And if there was an injury, you get a huge, significant jump in value for Jerome Ford. Now, my third running back handcuff is going to be a rookie. It is going to be Tank Bigsby out of Auburn, being drafted to the Jacksonville Jaguars. He is going to slot in as the quote-unquote handcuff to Travis Etienne. He's being valued as running back 39 right now. It's going to be tough to trade for guys, especially right after the rookie drafts. People who have drafted him typically want to hold on to him. If you haven't done your rookie drafts, you can kind of look at him in that aspect. I've seen him. I've picked him in the end of 3rd rounds plenty of times in the last couple of rookie drafts that I've been in. I think that he's going to be able to step in and have a role immediately. I do not think that Tank Bigsby needs an injury to have value this year. I think, he's going to be able to slot in very well to how early in 2022 we saw that Travis Etienne and James Robinson were getting some split work. There was times where we saw James Robinson producing for you for fantasy football. It was kind of inconsistent because we didn't know whether it was going to be an Etienne day or a James Robinson day. But I do think that ultimately the Jacksonville Jaguars do want to run an offense in that type of fashion. Tank Bigsby is super, super talented, man. I really do like him. He's good catching the football. He's good inside and outside of the tackles. It really doesn't matter for Tank Bigsby. I think he's a very, very solid prospect. And he's going to step into a role where I think he's going to be pretty relevant right away. So he is going to be somebody I am trying to add to my rosters. I've already been adding him to my rosters. And if there is an injury to Travis Etienne, which is something we've seen in the past before, I do think that Tank Bigsby could possibly step into that RB1, high-end RB2 territory. If there is an injury to Etienne, he could possibly be one of those league-winning running backs. So he is a very, very high-value handcuff to me. I would be adding Tank Bigsby to most of my rosters if I could go get him. And again, he's being valued as the RB39. So definitely worth the gamble, in my opinion, for your dynasty rosters. Now, another running back that I do want to add that I do see as a handcuff is going to be Zach Charbonnet. Again, another rookie coming out of UCLA going to the Seattle Seahawks. He is going to be the handcuff to Kenneth Walker. But the thing about Zach Charbonnet is he's being valued as a top 21 fantasy football running back right now, per Keep Trade Cut in Dynasty Fantasy Football. Obviously, that's a little bit high. I don't know if you're buying that. However, I want to talk about him anyways because he is a high value handcuff. I do think that he has the ability to produce for you in that aspect. There is going to be times where I think Zach Charbonnet is going to be very, very frustrating for Kenneth Walker owners. I think he's going to be utilized in the passing game at times. I think he can be used as a goal line back. I think there is a significant role for Zach Charbonnet alongside Kenneth Walker. When you look back at the stats last year, you can kind of see why the Seattle Seahawks wanted to add Zach Charbonnet. As talented and as awesome as Kenneth Walker is, I love the dude as a football player, man. He is fantastic, but he led the NFL in 0 or negative yard rushes at almost 25%. So 1 out of every 4 rushes that he had last year was going for 0 or negative rushing yards. So because of that, they wanted to add a guy like Zach Charbonnet. I think he's going to be utilized in this offense. It's going to be more of a split than we think. Maybe a 60-40 is kind of what I'm thinking right away. But I think Zach Charbonnet is going to have some value. But if there was an injury to Kenneth Walker, Zach Charbonnet, again, just like I said with Tank Bigsby, he's going to have the ability to be a running back one in fantasy football. And I think that the ceiling for Zach Charbonnet is actually going to be higher than Tank Bigsby if there was an injury, because I just think that the way that the Seattle Seahawks use their running backs, Zach could be fantastic if there was an injury. So again, there's going to be a role for Charbonnet by himself with Kenneth Walker in the backfield, probably a 60-40 split. But if there was an injury, Zach Charbonnet is going to be fantastic. If you're the Kenneth Walker owner, you should probably be going to get Zach Charbonnet. And even if you're not, I think you can add him and, hopefully get some production out of him in that aspect. But when it's all said and done, he is being valued as running back 21 already. So I don't know how easily you're going to be able to go and trade for him. But again, he's valuable nonetheless. So I wanted to speak about him today. And last but not least, I wanted to talk about my 5th and final handcuff. And this is probably the most valuable handcuff that I'm going to talk about today. That is going to be Alexander Mattison for the Minnesota Vikings. And I feel like we've been talking about Alexander Mattison for years and years and years now. Mattison is currently being valued as the running back 28 in fantasy football. So he's being valued less than Zach Charbonnet. However, I think that Alexander Mattison has the highest possibility to exceed expectations in 2023. There's a very high possibility this year that Dalvin Cook does get cut still. There is a chance that he gets traded. Even if it's something that's more towards the NFL trade deadline, I do not see Dalvin Cook going into the season really as the starter, and I really don't see him ending the season as the starter in Minnesota. I think there's a very high possibility that Alexander Mattison is the starter of this football team. I think they signed him with the hopes that he would end up being that guy, and the Minnesota Vikings have talked highly about him through and through all offseason long. When Dalvin Cook is not on the field, we've seen Alexander Mattison produce low-end RB1 numbers. He's been fantastic for fantasy football. This is a team that's going to score a lot of fantasy football points. They are playing at a very high volume. They just play fast, man. It's a really good situation for fantasy football points. And I think that Alexander Mattison is undervalued. Again, he's being valued as the running back 28. He's 24 years old, going to be 25 years old when the season starts, but that still gives you some time in fantasy football. I think Alexander Mattison is completely undervalued. And if he's not the starter this year, he's going to be the starter next year. And this year, he's going to be a high value handcuff and potentially a starter this year, too. So I do not think you can go wrong with Alexander Mattison. I would be adding him wherever I can. And if you're the Dalvin Cook owner, I would be going to get Alexander Mattison. If you don't already, you probably should have him if you're the Dalvin Cook manager. But if you don't have him already, I would be going to add him because, one, it gives you insurance in case Dalvin Cook doesn't get cut or traded for whatever reason that may be. But more likely than not, when he does get cut or traded, you're going to have 2 starting running backs and you paid handcuff pricing for him. That is all I have for you guys today. Hopefully you enjoyed that content. If you found any of that actionable content, something that you could utilize to help you get better in your fantasy football leagues, please go ahead and leave this video a like, subscribe, comment, do all of that YouTube stuff that you typically do on YouTube to help people out in the algorithm. Because at the end of the day, we are a small channel, and that type of stuff really does help us grow. So we do appreciate the people that do that for us. We appreciate you taking some time out of your day and watching this as well. If you haven't joined our free Discord, we do have a free Discord. It is going to be linked in the YouTube header. It is also going to be linked in the description, so you can go find it there and join us. We're going to talk fantasy football in there all the time. We also have people submit stuff for videos, so in future videos, you might be able to be featured if you join that Discord. And with all of that being said, I don't have anything else for you guys today. I hope to see you on the next video. Peace out.